Fights Back, show 41. And during this era of transgender, when everybody believes they can be either man or woman, I thought I'd make a change for show 41, and instead of having Mr. King introducing and opining throughout, I thought I, his sister, Miss King, would say hello to you today. Makeup? Wig? Prop? Oh, forget it. It's only a one-shot joke. Although I do think it rather suits me. Perhaps I should wear a wig more often. I make a very good lady. In fact, I played several ladies in my very first film, Vile Pervert the Musical. It's free to view if you want to watch it online, and it's had over 4 million views so far. I mentioned earlier the Munich Olympic Games from 1972. That's when I first came here and swam after the Munich Olympic Games. The Munich Olympic Games 1972 were rather tragic because they ended when I think 2 Israeli athletes were killed by Palestinian terrorists. I had a record out that year which was officially called the official Munich Olympic Games theme 1972, and I thought it was quite funny, rather mocking athletes and the whole Olympics thing. Unfortunately, whilst it really took off and was on the Russell Harty show on television and everybody loved it and thought it was going to be a huge hit, it then suddenly died when the Israeli athletes died, and that was the end of it. Still think it's rather a funny track though. Take a listen.
End.
Well, I thought it was quite funny anyway, to the sound of marching stormtroopers and Deutschland, Deutschland über alles, a special Jonathan King lyric, the official Munich Olympic Games theme 1972. I really don't think we need to have too much of her. She forced me into it, tied me up, locked me in a cellar, but I'm free again. One of the things I was planning to do on my trip to Munich was take you to Bad Tolz. Bad Tolz is about an hour's drive south of Munich in the heart of the Alps in Bavaria, and it's a lovely little village, and it has a marvellous thing called Alpenmare, which is a sort of indoor and outdoor swimming complex that's open all year round and is great fun because you can actually swim in the snow outside because it's heated pools as well as slides and all the other things. And I used to go there all the time. And I thought, well, I was there last time I was here in Munich, which was, I think, 2021, a couple of years ago. And it's great out there, and you'd really enjoy seeing it. Luckily, I decided to go online just to check the opening hours and to see it had closed down completely in 2015. And it dawned on me that actually last time I was here in Munich I hadn't gone there, and Munich is one of those cities I don't go to quite as often as the others. I mean, you can virtually guarantee every year I'm in Rome, I'm in Kane and Antibes, I'm in Morocco, every year in all those places, apart from a couple of years when I was at Her Majesty's pleasure in Great Britain, which gave me a great deal more pleasure than it gave Her Majesty, I gather. But I was rather sad because I thought, well, goodness, I was there in 2015 and it must have been just a couple of months before it shut down permanently. So it's no longer there, and I can't really be bothered to do the hour's drive south and then back again just to show you Bad Tolz, although it is a very pretty little typical Bavarian village. But I don't think I can be bothered with that. You'll just have to make do with more of Munich, I'm afraid. Actually, Munich isn't boring at all, especially when you travel around a lot like I do and you sample all the cuisine, the Thai food, tom kha gai and dim sum, which is delicious, and a Mai Tai to drink, which was far too strong. I ordered a second one and couldn't drive home. This is one of the Thai restaurants in Munich. There are now Thai restaurants all over the world. There weren't when I first went to Bangkok and I fell in love with the food. And when I got back to New York, I searched for a Thai restaurant. There wasn't one. I rang the consulate, which was answered the phone by the ambassador, the Thai ambassador to America, who said, "Oh, friends of mine are opening the first Thai restaurant outside Thailand tonight. You must go there." So I did and loved it. One of the things that happens as you get older, and the cities are changing and the infrastructure changes, and I find now virtually every year when I go to a new city, and I'm nearly always driving in that city, because even if I'm not in my own car, I tend to hire a car wherever I go. But all the roads I know have all changed. They've either been blocked up or they've gone one way instead of the other. All the shortcuts I take, because I am quite experienced in driving everywhere. And I've got to tell you, every city is the same now. Here in Munich, I really almost had to re-educate myself by spending literally a day or so driving around, finding out all the new shortcuts and the new ways that everything's being built and where to avoid and all the rest of it, because there are roadworks there. It just, it gets quite tiring. But the point of this series, whether tiring or not, was to show you the world on my trip of 10,000, I think it's probably nearer 20,000 kilometres around Europe and Morocco, and see if you were interested in it. At the same time, playing you some music and getting, by the way, thanks for loads and loads of comments about it. One of the favourites I've used so far, particularly applicable because the sun is just coming out in Munich and it's beginning to look gorgeous. Under the name The Sun Singers, I recorded You Were On My Mind. I have noticed that there is an enormous extra amount of foreigners all over Europe, which I thoroughly approve of course, since I'm a fan of open all borders, but it's actually quite significant. Switzerland, for example, has many more Muslims in it than it used to. The hotel I was in, which was actually a very nice little Novotel in Zurich, was almost entirely crammed with tourists, most of whom were from Afghanistan and similar places, India, Pakistan, all sorts of places. A lot of Muslim ladies with the masks, whatever they call them, and all the rest of it, and families and so on. And here in Germany, it's even more so, in that I've seen that there are an enormous amount of Turks here. Well, we've always seen there's a huge Turkish influx into Germany, especially into Munich, which is quite close to the south and all that. And it's always had a very heavily Turkish element to it, especially around the station, the Hauptbahnhof, which is almost like a Turkish enclave. And those families that have been there for years and years, decades, have sort of grown and become a part of Germany, obviously intermarried and families link up and all the rest of it. So there's always been a very big Turkish element. You can always spot it actually in Eurovision. You'll always see a big vote for Turkey from Germany and a vote for Germany from Turkey in Eurovision each time the votes come in. Always amuses me. It's always interesting to see. But definitely this year, there's a huge influx of extra kind of immigrants. And I notice in Germany, which has been very good with immigrants, and I thoroughly approved Angela Merkel when she was in charge here, really really led the campaign to allow immigrants to come into Germany, which I thoroughly approved of, although some of the more conservative Germans, of course, don't, and it's caused problems, but I'm thoroughly in favour of it, as you know. But that is really interesting. I've noticed it this time. Since, as I said, I don't come to Munich quite as often as I go to Rome, Venice and all the other places, it was definitely noticeable this time, although I've been here a couple of years ago from when I was here before that, which must have been 7 years ago now, looking at the Alpamare closing.
There'll be no strings to bind your hands, not if her love can't bind your heart. There's no need to take a stand, she's the one who chose to start. And there's no need to take her home, she's old enough to face the dawn. Just call her angel of the morning, angel. Just touch her cheek before you leave her. Just call her angel of the morning, angel. Then slowly turn away, turn away. Maybe the sun's light will be dim, and it won't matter anyhow. If morning's echo says you've sinned, well, it was what she wanted now. And if you're victims of the night, she won't be blinded by the light. Just call her angel of the morning, angel. Just touch her cheek before you leave her, then you leave her. Just call her angel of the morning, angel. Then slowly turn away, she won't beg you to stay. Through the tears of the day, of the years, later she's a lady. Just call her angel of the morning, angel. Just touch her cheek before you leave her, then you leave her. Just call her angel of the morning, angel. Just touch her cheek before you leave her, then leave her, and call her angel of the morning, angel. And touch her cheek before you leave her, then you leave her. Just call her angel of the morning, angel.
It is rather strange that the Germans have become so non-nationalist. They've obviously learnt from past mistakes, and the British have become completely nationalist, what with Brexit and everything else. One of the things that does puzzle me is it is so easy, or would be so easy, to stop the small boats and the people smuggling. All the government of the United Kingdom needs to do is essentially put on a ferry once a week, or perhaps 2 ferries each week, which will house 500 or 600 people. They will charge the people a small amount, say 20 quid each, to get on the ferry from France back to Britain. And they will then arrive in Britain to a very secure place where they will be processed coming off the ferries, and then either put in hotels or on barges or sent to Rwanda or whatever the government decides it ought to be done. In my opinion, they should all be let in except the obvious terrorists and criminals, but even so, I'm one in a few on that. Now, I can't work out why that doesn't happen. The small fee, 20 quid or 30 quid each, is so much less than the people smugglers charge, and yet it would cover all the costs of the petrol and the the expense of the border people and all the rest of it for the government. It would completely stop people smuggling and the small boats coming in. There wouldn't be necessarily more people trying to come in because they've already got to get into Europe and all the way across Italy and Albania and France and everywhere else to get to the Channel to come across to Britain. So it probably wouldn't increase any level and would cost us absolutely nothing and save us an absolute fortune and stop the poor Coast Guards wasting all their time having to save people who were drowning in the Channel. It makes such sense. Likewise, people coming into Europe, the same thing should happen in my opinion. But as I said, I'm the one in a million who feels that way. Yet to me, it's obvious. I always used to come swimming here in Munich, starting at about 11 o'clock in the morning. And I used to swim, well, probably for about 4 or 5 hours until about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, virtually non-stop, very slowly, only the breaststroke, because I think that's good for all your different joints and muscles and various other things. I'm not a big fan of the crawl or the backstroke. I think that twists things round the wrong way. I'm a great believer in breaststroke. Opens up the lungs, accelerates the heart and everything else. These days, sadly, I'm so much older, I really can't do 5 hours a day, and it tends to be nearer a couple of hours a day, probably in 2 or 3 half-hour bursts. I was thinking of going down to the Bayern Munich Alliance Stadium tonight just to welcome Harry Kane to Munich, but decided not to, and instead I bought a football, which looks very nice. So now it's time for me to cross borders again, out of Germany into France, and then out of France into Great Britain. Well, I do hope you've enjoyed this episode of A Victim Bites Back, show number 41. Back in show number 42, we'll have Mr. King as normal. A horrible thought, I think you'll agree. Goodbye for now. Ow!